Number 10. Rogers. This alternate version of Captain America resided in Earth 311, the 1602 reality, but initially came from the dystopian future reality of Earth 460, where Purple Man, aka Kilgrave, had become president for life. As such, Purple Man had seen Captain America as one of the last remaining threats to his dictatorship, and rather than make a martyr out of him through execution, he sent him back into the past, displacing the hero. Captain America took a new identity in the reality of Earth 311, adopting the name Rogers, and used his opportunity to warn the First Nations peoples of the Americas of the risk posed to their existence by the settlers who would come. As Rogers, during his time on Earth 311, Captain America helped maintain peace between the indigenous peoples of the land and the Roanoke colony settlers. In this reality, Roanoke also never disappeared due to the fact that they had Rogers there to help them survive the harsh environment of their new home. Number 9. Iron Man. The bullet points version of Steve Rogers never became a super soldier. Instead, he joins Project Iron Man during World War II, becoming the first Iron Man in history. In order to become this new mechanical hero, he has to become surgically grafted to the suit. He would then fight during World War II and later retire but be called back into action to take on the Hulk, who in this reality was Peter Parker. As in most realities, Steve, even as Iron Man, is really no match for that hulking behemoth and ends up dying in battle against him. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list, if you want more lists like it, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Age of X. This version of Captain America was kind of a villain, although it wasn't entirely his fault. He was led to believe that in order to protect the world, he and his team of Avengers would have to take out and defeat all of the mutants, which included Cap hunting down not just all kinds of mutants, but all ages of mutants as well, if you pick up what I'm putting down. This Captain America mowed down tons of mutant kind with a gun, including Mystique, who was guarding mutant children. Fortunately, Mystique with her dying breath causes Captain America to question his mission and doubt that his objective is truly noble. He decides to go against orders and instead fight alongside the mutants working to protect them. Cap dies a hero, taking on the Hulk, who decides to stick with the mission, calling Steve a traitor. Once again, another reality where it's Cap versus Hulk and Hulk just destroys Cap. Number 7. Union Soldier Steven Rogers. What if Captain America fought in the American Civil War? Well, you can bet this is the version of the hero that we would get. Steven Rogers vs. 717 is the character who first appeared in the What If Captain America issue number 1 out of 2005. Here we explore just that version of Steve, who served in the American Civil War as a Union soldier. In the end, he turns against his villainous Colonel Bucky Barnes, who in this reality becomes the supervillain White Skull. In so doing, Steven becomes injured and is taken in and saved by the Eagle Chief, Wee Piak. Not only does the Eagle Chief save his life, but he also grants him extra strength, transforming him into the hero Captain America, who is armed with a mystical shield, peak human physique, and reflexes, and is rumored to be protected against all harm. This version of Captain America fights hard throughout the years to make sure the United States is a place of opportunity for all who call it their home. He truly represents the Captain America ideal of equality. Number 6. Ultimate Captain America. In the Ultimate Universe of Earth 1610, Captain America is considered to be even more powerful than his 616 counterpart. The super soldier serum here didn't just prolong his life and leave him in peak human condition across the board, increasing his strength, speed, and durability, but it also gave him an accelerated healing factor and put him at a superhuman level when it came to his strength and his speed. It was once claimed that Steve Rogers of this reality could bench press a car. Across the board, this version could be considered stronger than the 616 version, although I would argue that 616 Captain America does have better leadership skills than our 1610 version. But that's just me.
Number 5. The Punisher. That's right, in Marvel's marvelous world of what ifs, anything is possible, including a world where Frank Castle ends up being chosen to be Captain America instead of Steve Rogers. He does eventually get carried away like we are so used to seeing him do and attempt to go on a murderous rampage, but in the end is reined in by none other than Steve himself, who reminds him that he is a role model for all of America and that he basically has to be better. When Castle offers the mantle of Captain America to Rogers himself, he actually refuses, saying that Frank needs to be Cap because he is a living mortal man, which makes him, I guess, more relatable to the American people, because in this reality, Rogers is a cyborg. I guess we can't relate with cyborgs. I feel like that's a weird lesson. So yeah, Frank stays on as Captain America, and Steve goes on to fight crime as the Captain. Cyborgs can't be Captain America. How dare they? Number 4, Roscoe Simmons. Steve Rogers hasn't always been Captain America, and there have been a few times that his frustration with the government and the politics that sometimes comes along with the name has caused him to escape into another mantle, leaving the Captain America name and looking for someone to step in and replace him during his absence. Roscoe Simmons was a promising candidate given the seal of approval by Steve Rogers himself, who at the time was operating under the name Nomad, which you might remember from the MCU, because there's kind of a little Nomad reference in there. Falcon Sam Wilson even trained Simmons himself, but expressed concern as to if Simmons was really prepared enough to be Captain America. Falcon was worried that Roscoe might not only be hurt in the line of duty, but may even wind up dead. And he was right to be worried about that, turns out, because that is exactly what happened. When Red Skull learned that the Captain America he was facing was not in fact Steve Rogers, but his replacement, Roscoe Simmons, in a rage, he killed Simmons, seeking also to teach Rogers a lesson in the process about attempting to find a replacement and leave his mantle. Red Skull's like, "You're my nemesis and you can never do anything else." Red Skull crucified Simmons and tortured him to death. Roscoe's death did inspire Steve to return as Captain America, despite his continuing frustration with the government. Roscoe Simmons, R.I.P. I feel bad for Roscoe Simmons. Number 3, John Walker. John Walker was the man chosen to replace Captain America after he quit, more permanently this time. Captain America decided to leave the mantle behind when he no longer felt it was a good idea to be working for the government, who at the time were quite corrupt. Although Steve Rogers would continue to operate as a hero, he wouldn't be able to use the name of Captain America, as, well, it technically belonged to the federal government. Instead, he would become known as the Captain, and the US government would recast the heroic role of Captain America. John Walker ended up being the man they chose, who proved to be a much more violent and ruthless Captain America in comparison to Rogers, having no qualms about killing those who got in his way. In the end, Rogers was able to convince Walker of his misdeeds and even helped him to reform. Walker ended up giving the mantle back to Steve and would go on to become the redemption-seeking hero, US agent. Number 2, Bucky Barnes. Also known as the Winter Soldier, Bucky Barnes was originally Captain America's young sidekick from way back in 1941. For years we thought Bucky was dead until Ed Brubaker brought him back as Russia's brainwashed operative and later on, by extension, Hydra's brainwashed assassin, where we'd come to know him as Winter Soldier. Fortunately, Captain America was able to give Bucky back his true mind and memories using the Cosmic Cube, and Bucky then set out on a mission of atonement, before being tossed into the position of Captain America himself, after Cap was suspected of being dead after being shot by a time-traveling bullet during the events of Civil War. True story. Bucky would take up Cap's shield, costume, and the name himself temporarily. Eventually, he would return to his Winter Soldier mantle after he was put on trial for the crimes that he'd committed in his former life, which honestly tend to have a way of coming back to haunt him no matter what good he does. I feel like Bucky's always haunted by those old Winter Soldier days. But that's fair, it's probably pretty traumatizing. Number 1, Falcon. Falcon was the chosen successor for the Captain America title in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, with an elderly Steve Rogers who went back in time to live out his life with Peggy, passing on the shield to his friend Sam Wilson at the end of Endgame. And I guess near the end of his life, he was pretty old there. We don't know if this is something that will stick in the MCU, but in the comics, Sam Wilson has already stepped into Steve's shoes, serving as Captain America after Steve found himself rapidly aged. The major difference between Sam and Steve's approach to being Captain America is that Rogers preferred to stay out of politics, whereas Wilson believes that it's actually his duty to get involved in them. I personally think in the MCU what's going to happen is we're going to have US Agent, who's going to be the person that the government picks, and then Sam Wilson, they're going to be like, we don't care that Captain America passed the shield on to you. It's our mantle, we do what we want. But hopefully the government will come around and then Sam will get to be Captain America again. Or he'll convince John Walker like Steve did. Anyways, you're not coming here to hear my theories on Sam Wilson's future in the MCU, but that's what I think.
Alright, number 10 is the Captain America of 3099. Although this version of Captain America is not native to any comic books, he is still probably one of the sweetest looking Captain Americas we have ever seen. He is James Rogers, presumably an ancestor of Steve Rogers, and he wields a shield that seems to be made of pure energy that can do multiple different things. It's seen to be able to be thrown, and can even turn into a much larger shield that even creates a force field bubble around James. It seems to also be able to duplicate and become multiple shields, giving James protection while other shields are bouncing around enemies. The story reason for his existence is that in a fight between an Ultron under the control of Red Skull and Captain America, Iron Man, and Black Widow, a portal to an alternate dimension opened up, and the alternate 3099 versions of those heroes came through and fought the main ones. I don't care what the excuse is, to be honest. All the versions of these 3099 heroes are sweet. Alright, number 9, Miles Morales Cap. If you haven't checked out the What If Miles Morales stories, please do yourself the favor. It may not make much sense as to why Miles ends up in the situations he does, but he becomes Wolverine, Hulk, Thor, and, of course, Captain America. In the very first issue, Miles' dad is part of the new super soldier program inspired by the original. Uncle Aaron, who always plays a large part in Miles' life, steals the super soldier serum and keeps it in his fridge, which is where Miles finds it while he's looking for a drink. Turns out Miles is a perfect match for the super soldier serum, and he becomes the new Captain America. It's so cool. Because not only is Miles the new Cap, but Tiana Toombs becomes the Falcon, and Sam Wilson becomes the new director of S.H.I.E.L.D., like with the eye patch and everything. Uncle Aaron becomes Prowler after being attacked by Black Widow, and Lonnie Lincoln is the Grey Skull, which is this reality's Red Skull. He seems to be just as powerful as the normal Captain America, if not a little younger and by extension a little more naive. But he's still cool, so. Number 8, Gladiator Cap. Thank the Marvel gods for creating Battleworld. This great amalgamated world gave us tons of different alternate characters and cool little side stories, one of which was Planet Hulk. Captain America and Bucky Barnes fought in a war between the realm of Apocalypse and Greenland, which is a realm inhabited by Hulks, but they were captured and forced to fight in the Colosseum alongside Devil Dinosaur on the outskirts of Doomstadt. At some point, Bucky seemed to be captured by the Red King of Greenland, and the Captain and Devil Dinosaur are sent by God King Doom and his warden Strange to take out the Red King and destabilize Greenland in exchange for also saving Bucky. Now, that's all the premise I really need to see this amazing story and this awesome Captain America variant. He's defeated a group called the Wolverine Clan, he's got long hair, he's battle scarred, he wields a battle axe alongside his tattered patchwork shield, he's a gladiator, and he fights alongside a giant red T-Rex. I mean... Number 7, Rogers. Coming back at you with Marvel 1602 yet again, we have a Captain America who initially came from Earth 460. And on this Earth, Purple Man had become president for life, and Captain America was one of the last heroes resisting him, like we'd expect. Purple Man wasn't able to end this Steve Rogers, so instead, he was sent back to the 1600s. Steve now found himself in Virginia, and he aligned himself with a Native American tribe, assimilating himself into their way of life. Steve taught them what he knew about his present time, his language, and, most importantly, the near annihilation of the Native American peoples. His arrival and discovery at this time caused alternate versions of other heroes to start appearing in this now alternate timeline. But it also caused reality to start breaking just a wee little bit. He went by the name Rogers and kept his origins a secret, being mistaken by the English to be descended from Welsh explorers who reached America before Christopher Columbus. He did not reveal himself until much later, when he would be sent back to his time. I love the 1602 story, and I think what Steve becomes falls right in line with his character. He helped the Native Americans to be aware of what the Europeans would do, and he even saved the colonists of Roanoke and became the protector of Virginia Dare. I promise this story is worth a read, just do it. Number 6, Cap Wolf. In the 616 reality, in Captain America Volume 1, number 405 from 1992, Captain America is injected with a serum by Dr. Nightshade that gives him the curse of the werewolf, giving us Cap Wolf. Now, while he ultimately recovers from the curse, in the reality of Earth 666, everyone is some kind of monster version of themselves, so obviously, this version of Cap Wolf never recovered from the curse and remained a werewolf, becoming a core member of the Undead Avengers. It's a super soldier werewolf. I'm not too sure what the rules on his power levels would be exactly, but I know he's gotta be more powerful than a regular Captain America, for sure. Maybe a little bit more feral with less of a tactician's thinking, but he's covered in fur, got crazy sharp claws, and I'm sure his bite is worse than his bark. God, I'm sorry, that was a bad joke.
Number 5. Rorschach. Walter Kovacs was raised by a mother who mistreated him, basically resenting his very existence. This mistreatment inspired Walter to stand up to those who would hurt others. These beliefs led to Walter himself to brutally confront his own schoolyard bullies, even going so far as to blind one of them as a child. Walter became a sociopath because of how he was treated when he was younger, believing in a strict moral code and using that as his own vigilante compass to decide who should be punished and how severely. His mother was a prostitute, and when he learned of her death at the hands of her pimp, who force-fed her Drano to kill her, he only responded with one word: good. Ooh, dark. Number 4. Jessica Jones. In the Netflix Jessica Jones series, we learn that Jessica Jones became a detective and hero in essence because of the fact that she was assaulted and mind-controlled by Purple Man, who made her to do all sorts of things that she didn't want to do. In the Alias series, Jessica Jones attempts to confront her trauma, wrestling with just how much control Kilgrave actually had over her, and if it's possible that part of her motivation for all of the things he had her do could have actually come somehow from within herself. This is a common thing with victims of this type of assault, wondering about how much responsibility or control you actually had in that situation, and in a sense blaming yourself for what happened to you. But beyond this, Jessica Jones's original origins, how she got her powers, actually involved a massive vehicular collision, where her entire family was killed except for her. And it's implied that she only survived because she was exposed to radioactive materials, whose containers were damaged in the accident, leaking out and interacting with Jessica. Jessica's original last name had been Campbell, and she didn't get her name Jones until she was later adopted by Alyssa Jones and her husband, after Jessica's family's death. Ugh. Actually, Jessica seems to be a bit of a cursed name in the Marvel Universe. There's a lot of Jessicas with dark origins. Number 3. Magneto. Well known for a long time in the comics by his alias Eric Magnus Lenscher, Magneto's original name and origins revealed that he grew up as a young Jewish boy during World War II named Max Eisenhardt. His family left Germany when things started to get bad, retreating to Warsaw, where they lived in the Warsaw Ghetto. Eventually, Max was taken to the extermination camp at Auschwitz after he and his family attempted to leave the Warsaw Ghetto. Following his time at Auschwitz, Max shed his original name and adopted another so that he might better fit in with his wife Magda's Romani people. When it comes to Magneto's backstory, he is no stranger to discrimination, and it is his suffering and the suffering of others that he has witnessed that has inspired him to become the villain and the sometimes hero that we know today. Number 2. Red Hood. When it comes to Jason Todd's transformation from Robin to Red Hood, there was a ton of dark events that came into play here, which caused Jason Todd to go from hero to villain, and then of course to anti-hero. Todd was seemingly one of the permanent deaths in comics after he was beaten to near death by the Joker, following being sold out by his own birth mother, who he then even still fought to free before being killed in an explosion. We thought we'd never see him return, but he was later brought back using the Lazarus Pit, and then was trained by Dukra of the All Cast and joined the League of Assassins for a time. When he finally returned to Gotham, it was originally as the villain Red Hood, seeking brutal justice, and later on, as Joker would say in Three Jokers, Book 1, becoming one of his own villainous creations. Ooh, so dark. When you realize you've become a thing you didn't want to be and someone evil made you that. Eee. Number 1. Wolverine. Wolverine has more trauma in his life than all the X-Men put together. Actually, he's probably got more trauma in one pinky than all of the X-Men. The only thing that protects Wolverine from the darkness of his own multi-chapter tragic origins is the fact that his brain actually also uses his healing factor to basically rid him of undesirable or painful memories. Young James Howlett's powers first manifested when his birth father killed his foster father, the husband of his mother. In a rage, James used his bone claws to kill his birth father, Thomas Logan, and his mother, still recovering from the loss of her firstborn son, severely traumatized, then took her own life. There are a lot of things that came after that when it comes to Wolverine's story and his past, pretty much all of them being wrapped up in some kind of traumatic experience.
Number 10. Yeoman America. Back in Avengers Volume 3 Number 2 in January of 1998, Morgan Le Fay's reality distortion wave caused the time period to be altered to a medieval setting, which altered the Avengers' clothing, speech patterns, and thought processes. For Steven Rogers, he became Yeoman America, a knight-like soldier with red, blue, and white stars and stripes armor, and weapons including a sword and a more fantasy-like shield. Now, to be clear, this is just regular 616 Captain America, but magically time displaced. So he's got all of his same abilities, but something about wearing a suit of armor and wielding a sword like that makes him just kind of better than himself? In my opinion, I don't know. Number 9.
Hydra Cap. While this version of Captain America did appear largely in the 616 reality, he's actually technically from an alternate timeline created by a Hydra brainwashed cubic who used her reality warping powers to make Captain America his ideal self. But since she was being influenced by Hydra, his ideal self was a Captain America who grew up being made loyal to Hydra. This Cap would eventually supplant the real Captain America of 616 and would organize the second superhuman civil war, as well as Chitauri invasions on the Earth. He got promoted to director of S.H.I.E.L.D. and influenced the legalization of the S.H.I.E.L.D. Act, which gave S.H.I.E.L.D. way more authority. He used this new power to basically organize a Hydra takeover of America, with Steve becoming the Hydra Supreme and bringing on the Secret Empire event. He was defeated by the proper version of Captain America, brought back by Cubic, but this Steve manipulated his way into an extremely high position of power, banishing mutants, imprisoning Inhumans, creating a Hydra Avengers team, and forcing other heroes into the underground. Number 8. Peggy Carter. If you've seen the Marvel Studios What If show, you know alternate versions of Peggy Carter get the super soldier serum in place of Sharon Rogers. Fans love this idea, even if it's strange for a British agent to become Captain America. There are a few different versions of Captain Carter to choose from, but they all generally share the same abilities. There was a version of the character who appeared in Exiles #3 in 2018 who had a great costume. The one in the Disney Plus show joined the Guardians of the Multiverse, so she was clearly an exceptional version of the character. She's also shown up in a new Marvel Cinematic Universe movie sporting a jetpack, and was able to give the villain of that movie a real good run for their money, while other more powerful characters were felled instantly. She can be a bit more hot-headed than her Steve Rogers counterpart, sure, but she has the power of fan love, and if you know anything about what that power can do, you know that Peggy Carter as Captain America is very powerful. Number 7. MCU Captain America. I find it hard to be able to put most of the MCU iterations of characters into a list of most powerful versions of themselves. The MCU tends to depower a lot of their characters, which I suppose is understandable from a storytelling perspective. But when this version of Cap wields Mjolnir and smacks around Thanos for a little while, nearly beating him all on his own, a feat the Hulk could not even achieve, and then fights the army Thanos brought with him, all with minimal training wielding the power of Thor, it's honestly a sight to behold. I almost wish they showed us Cap going through time, fixing all the branched timelines the Avengers had created. It would have been so cool seeing the ways he could use the hammer. Imagine Captain America flying through the air with his shield in one hand and being dragged by Mjolnir in the other. It would just be really cool. Number 6. Danielle Cage. On Earth 15061, Danielle Cage, the daughter of both Luke Cage and Jessica Jones, would eventually become the Captain America of her time. And, well, let's just think about this for a second. The subsonic flight and superhuman longevity of her mother, with the bulletproof skin of her father, plus the superhuman strength, durability, stamina, speed, and healing factor of both of them? Yes, Danielle Cage doesn't just use the shield of Captain America. She is the shield. She arguably does not even need her shield, which is a controllable drone replica of the original. Unfortunately, we don't get to see much of this version of Danielle Cage, but we know Danielle is a force to be reckoned with, and as such, she is a Captain America who deserves to be on this list.
Number 5. William Burnside. William Burnside was the Captain America of the 1950s, who ended up being retconned to not actually be Steve Rogers at all, although he was a man who believed he was Steve Rogers. This version of Captain America was later revealed to be William Burnside initially, a man who was hired to replace Captain America after he went missing in World War II. This version of Captain America was racist and extremely anti-communist, echoing the McCarthy communist witch hunts of those times. Burnside legally changed his name to Stephen Rogers and would have an extended lifespan thanks to a version of the super soldier serum that he was exposed to. However, because this was not a perfected version of the serum, it apparently would also cause him to become more extreme over time as his psyche and mind degraded as a result, so made him pretty crazy and pretty evil. Number 4. Evil Clone. An evil clone with the mind of Red Skull. To be honest, This has happened multiple times in the comics, where Red Skull has ended up having his consciousness, his personality, or his memories, or some combination of those, into the clone of Steve Rogers. It's happened both in the main continuity and in alternate universes. For this version though, we're going to be talking about issue 350 of Captain America, where the Red Skull in Steven Rogers' clone body ends up being the mastermind behind the whole commission/Walker kerfuffle that we talked about earlier on this list. His plan this time around in a Steve Rogers clone body is to discard his previous ideologies and use capitalism itself to dismantle the democracy of America and destroy the nation from the inside out. It doesn't work out in the end, and the issue ends with him facing off against both John Walker and the Captain and becoming deformed once more by the red dust of death. But he did try it. He did try. And don't worry, he would come back in more clone bodies. That's how he do. Number 3, Vampire King. This version of Captain America comes from the Exile series, where he becomes king of the vampires. In the alternate reality of Earth 3931 during World War II by Baron Blood. Baron Blood turns him into a vampire. Vampire Cap is definitely not a good dude. Likely the most evil of all the monstrous Captain Americas listed here, this version of Captain America has his own sinister version of the Avengers and Thralls, who he enlists and forces to fight for him. However, he still proves to be no match for the Exiles, who end up defeating and decapitating him in the end. Number 2, President Red Skull. Not an alternate version of Steve Rogers, but an alternate version of Red Skull who beat Rogers and took to wearing his Captain America suit off and around his new redecorated Oval Office. This alternate version of Red Skull comes from the Old Man Logan universe, where Red Skull ends up appointing himself the new president of the US, which he renames America. America with a K. Red Skull ends up not just defeating Captain America, but also almost all of the superhero community when he manages to rally together an impossible to defeat force of supervillains who coordinate their attack on the nation. Being that he's Red Skull, he's probably one of the most evil versions of Captain America out there because he's Red Skull, although like I said, he's not fully a Cap really, but he definitely evil, so. And he does wear that suit a lot. Number 1, Hydra Supreme. This alternate version of Captain America was initially retconned to be the version of Captain America. Steven Rogers ended up being revealed as a Hydra sleeper agent in one of the biggest twists in comic book history. All his heroic actions had apparently just been Steve buying time and building trust so that he'd be in the perfect position to take over the US and could then reveal his true colors. Hail Hydra to this day is one of the most iconic lines ever uttered by the supposed hero. However, it all turned out that this version of Cap wasn't the real Steve Rogers of 616. Instead, what happened was Kobik, the sentient living version of the Cosmic Cube, was convinced by Red Skull that reality should be warped so that Cap could become an agent of Hydra. When this happened, the real heroic version of Captain America ended up trapped within a shard of the Cosmic Cube, and the now altered version of the character took his place in the reality of 616. In the end, the true Cap would be freed from the shard and would end up fighting and defeating his evil Hydra Supreme alternate version. And if you're worried, don't worry, the shard was made bigger, so it wasn't like little tiny Cap running around.
Number 10, Red Skull. Yeah, I bet you never thought you'd see the day. Obviously, this one ranks so low on the list because of, well, just how despicable this whole thing is, despite the fact that it actually makes for quite an interesting story. Red Skull becoming Captain America and later President of the United States happens, of course, in a what-if story. Where else would this happen? In this what-if, following the end of World War II, both Hitler and Red Skull are believed to have been defeated, but dun dun dun, Red Skull actually survived. Making sure that Steve Rogers was lost at sea after the war was won, Red Skull plotted to manipulate people under the guise of Steve Rogers himself. Red Skull transferred his mind into a clone of Rogers and set about impersonating him, using Rogers' trustworthy reputation and influence to his advantage. Eventually, the real Captain America, however, did return and would end up putting a stop to evil President Red Skull Cap and his army of super soldiers. I feel like anytime you have a Captain America that's like, I'm gonna make an army of super soldiers, you should probably be suspicious of that Cap. because I feel like that's not a thing that Steve would normally do. Number 9, Clark Kent. But not exactly the Clark Kent you're thinking of. In the Amalgam universe, Clark Kent is a normal human who ends up becoming an alternate version of Captain America, known as Super Soldier, after he is given a serum that was created from the blood of an alien baby who crash-landed on planet Earth. Also, I feel like it's really weird that they took an alien baby's blood and made a serum with it. But I digress. This is a pretty dark story in my opinion. While this version might not hold the title of Captain America, he definitely looks the part, well, minus his S for Super Soldier shield, and is meant to be like a version of both Captain America and Superman combined, cause amalgam. He also comes with his own villains such as Green Skull and Lex Luthor, who in this world is actually the head of Hydra. Hail Hydra, says Lex Luthor. Alright friends, before we move on to this next point, if you are enjoying hearing about all these different people that have been Captain America, feel free to give this video a thumbs up and show it. Number 8, James Newman. James Newman became Captain America for a brief moment in time, or really it's more like Captain America took hold of him, I guess. In the alternate reality of Earth 7116, Captain America finds himself rapidly aging and dying. As he loses his strength, he decides to work with specialists and participate in a sort of experiment that allows him to reach out like a sort of Force ghost to other military groups. Even after he passes on, Captain America's ghost is seen by James Newman and him alone while serving in Afghanistan. Cap helps to bolster James's courage and strength when he needs it most, helping him to believe in himself and to perform heroic actions. After escaping a cave-in, Newman finds himself in the middle of an ambush, and Captain America possesses him briefly in order to help Newman not only survive, but defeat his attackers, leading Newman to state that he believes there's a bit of Captain America in all of us. Aw, what a sweet moral. You can be a hero too. It's true though, if you actually just were like, hey, I'm gonna be a hero today and do good things, you can do that. You should do that. Everyone should be a hero for a day every now and then. It's a nice way to help people out. Number 7, Cyclops. That's right, in the alternate future of what appears to be the Ultimate Universe, known as Earth 81122, an alternate of an alternate, we get an alternate Scott Summers and Jean Grey and Steve Rogers, who all find themselves at one point without powers. Rogers, in losing his powers, also ends up rapidly aging and dies. After his death, it was basically left to Scott Summers to take up the mantle, allowing the name of Captain America to live on, albeit briefly, because he dies. Scott dies. Scott Cap. Captain Scott Summers. Captain Scott Summers of America. Number 6, Roberta Mendez. One of the 2099 versions of Captain America. Roberta Mendez became Captain America unwillingly after her husband dosed her with the super soldier serum, kind of against her will. In fact, Roberta didn't even know she was Captain America, as Cap and Roberta were actually basically two separate personas, residing in the same body. Trigger words are usually deployed here to manipulate Roberta's mental state into switching between her Cap persona and just her everyday Roberta persona. This version of Captain America is part of Alchemax's Avengers and is believed to have the same level of durability and strength as her 616 counterpart, Steve Rogers.
Number 5, Ultimate Red Skull. In the Ultimate Universe, Steve Rogers and girlfriend at the time, Gail Richards, end up having a little one-night get-together in 1945 before he went and got himself popsicled. 9 months later, out popped a baby that the government decided needed to be kept a secret. They took the boy into foster care on a military base, training him to become a super soldier to replace the supposedly deceased Captain America. He soon became stronger and more tactically skillful than his father, and by all intents and purposes, seemed like the perfect compliant soldier. But to our surprise, Rogers' son had been carefully planning his escape and was biding his time. Fast forward to 1963, when he was finally at the age of 17, the son went on a spree, de-lifing all the doctors and soldiers at his facility. He also used the kitchen knife to carve the skin from his head, literally becoming the bloody Red Skull. In rebellion against the system that created him, Red Skull was the one who planned President John F. Kennedy's send-off to the grave. He becomes an assassin and tries to eventually steal Reed Richards' plans for the Cosmic Cube in order to use it to change history so he could grow up with his father. And now I'm really sad and this sucks. Number 4, Virginia Dare. I'm openly going to be cheating for this point. You'll have to forgive me because I ain't going back now. While Virginia Dare is not at all in any shape or form the daughter of Steve Rogers, on Earth 311, the Earth of Marvel 1602, she is the first child born in the Americas, aka the New World, and the time-displaced Rogers takes her under his wing in a way. Virginia has the ability to transform into any animal she wants, which is arguably a very powerful as well as versatile power. Rogers accompanies her across the ocean and to visit the Queen of England. He is her protector and he confides in her about his true origins, so they share a bond that's maybe a bit more comparable to a brother and a sister. But as he is inspired by the core values that he believes symbolize America, and she's the first child of America, his will to protect and guide her is strong enough that I think she deserves a spot here. Number 3. Sharon Rogers. This offspring of Captain America actually comes from Marvel Future Fight, therefore making it a little difficult to judge her level of power. But as for her backstory, well, in an alternate universe where Captain America was never frozen in ice at the end of World War II, Steve Rogers and Peggy Carter celebrated V-Day with a private marriage ceremony. In not too much time at all after the couple's honeymoon, when Peggy was assigned to South Korea, the couple welcomed the birth of their daughter, Sharon. Following in her heroic parents' footsteps, Sharon soon became an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. herself and eventually took over the role of Captain America. Tony Stark presented her with an awesome looking heavy-duty but lightweight Starlight armor, alongside a new energy-absorbing shield and a new weapon, the Blaster Lance. She looks wild and totally awesome, and I'm assuming is on par with her father ability-wise, but with the obvious technological equipment. Number 2. Ian Rogers. An adopted test tube baby created by Arnim Zola in Dimension Z, Ian Rogers, or Nomad, was taken by Steve Rogers and was raised for 10 years by him in Dimension Z until he was thought to be accidentally taken out by Sharon Carter. But he actually lived and was raised further by Sharon while Steve was back in the real world. Being trained by Cap, Ian was exceedingly useful in combat and even with using a shield like his father's. But he was also born with above peak human levels of physical and mental abilities, like enhanced strength, speed, intellect, and longevity, as well as accelerated healing thanks to the biogel Zola made him with. As long as he has a supply of the gel within his armor, his body will always fix itself. And that's pretty cool. He had a really awesome leading part in the Secret Wars story Hail Hydra from 2015. He once wielded the shield of Cap but now uses the Horde Crusher, which is a big old staff made by Arnim Zola. He's awesome. Check him out. And number 1. Sarah Rogers. In What If number 114 from September of 1998, we get a story of what would happen if the heroes who were transported to Battleworld in Secret Wars actually just stayed there. And well, they make babies. Sarah Rogers was the daughter of Steve Rogers, Captain America, and the X-Man Rogue. Now Rogue's body has actually been taken over by Carol Danvers in this story, who gained enough control over Rogue's powers for Sarah to actually exist, because, you know, Rogue can't do the whole physical touch thing. Her powers are pretty basic, with superhuman strength and durability, as well as the power of flight, but she permanently borrows the shield of her father, and it turns out she's actually worthy of wielding the hammer of Thor. It's great. During a fight with the son of Dr. Doom, who is trying to return to Earth and conquer it, Sarah, like most of these descended from the Captain, becomes a natural leader and helps inspire the other teen heroes. She is very powerful and she is very cool.
Number 10. Swarm. If you have a fear of bees, or more specifically mutated killer bees, then you might find the story of Fritz von Meyer to be terrifying. Meyer became a sometime Spider-Man villain after his transformation into basically a horde of killer bees. He was a scientist in the employ of the German Axis forces during World War II. Not much is known of his backstory previous to that, but with unlimited funding, he set out to study poisons, toxins, and bees. Finding an apparently mutated hive of bees, he attempted to awaken their killer instincts and seize control of them. But his plan backfired and they ended up gaining back their killer instincts and using them to swarm and kill Meyer. Meyer's consciousness, however, became absorbed into the bees as his physical form died, and as such, he is now a man who is made up entirely of bees. If that isn't something out of a nightmare, I really don't know what is. Number 9. Swamp Thing. Alec Holland is believed by Swamp Thing himself to be the man that the creature once was. Alec Holland and his wife were living out in the swamp and were both scientists who had developed a bio-restorative formula that would solve world hunger. However, goons were sent sent to sabotage and destroy the Discovery during this original origin story. The goons put explosives in the lab and Alec woke up following the explosion covered in the biorestorative formula. He ran out into the swamp but found himself merged with it, becoming an avatar of the green, merging with that swamp and becoming the monstrous creature known as Swamp Thing. Originally in the comics, Swamp Thing, believing it had once been Alec, was always trying to find a way to return to a more human state, longing to be mortal once more. Number 8. John Constantine. We recently got an interesting look into John Constantine's origins in the new DC Black Label limited series Rise and Fall. Hellblazer Rise and Fall. That's the whole long title. This is a story divided up and told over the course of 3 books. In the first book, we are told of Constantine's backstory and everything that has shaped him into the lovable troublemaker of an occult detective that he has become today. His life started in the dark from the moment he was born. His mother passed away, bringing him into the world, which set the stage for what his life would then be like. His father turned to drink and treated young John harshly, never once sympathizing with his son, which only motivated John to become more of a young vagabond, staying out and running around the streets of London late at night. We also learn of the tragic loss of one of his childhood friends in the book. Truly, it's a must-read for Constantine fans, or just for fans of good comics. Number 7. Batman. The death of Batman's parents and the trauma he suffered from witnessing that as a young boy would forever change Bruce. It would turn him into the vigilante he is today and inspire him to set out on a mission to become the Dark Knight, dedicating his life to an intense training regimen and traveling the world to learn from a variety of masters on a variety of subjects, from detective work to martial arts to magic. To this day, it's still the death of Bruce Wayne's parents that remains one of the most tragic events in his life, still haunting him to the point that he's even seen hallucinating about his parents' death while tripping on Joker venom during the current events of Joker War. Always tends to be the thing he comes back to. That and currently the loss of Alfred. Number 6. Sentry. Robert Reynolds was a drug addict who snuck into a lab and discovered the experimental Golden Sentry serum, though the backstory he'd be given in the comics within the Marvel Universe later on would be much less dark. Consuming the serum granted, Reynolds gained the power of 1,000,000 exploding suns, making him one of the most powerful superheroes ever known. Although the Sentry was a hero who was known for his Superman-like extreme level of goodness, he had a dark secret, one that was unknown even to him for a very long time. Bob Reynolds suffered from a split personality disorder, in part brought on by the villain Mastermind's manipulations, which meant that he was not only capable of immense good, but immense evil as well, as his personality split into that of the superheroic Sentry and the powerful supervillain known as the Void. When it was revealed that Bob himself was also the greatest villain on the planet, he recruited the help of his superhero friends such as Doctor Strange and Mr. Fantastic to help everyone, including Bob, forget about the Sentry, so that the Void would also never return, making Bob, for a time, the greatest hero that the world forgot.
Number 5. It's Venom Cap. With a whole Spider-Verse event, I think it was a genius move for Marvel to create a Venomverse event as well. All the reason I would need is just seeing a whole slew of characters who are Venomized. One of the most prominent would be the leader of the Resistance, a Venom-bonded version of Captain America, who first appeared in the Edge of Venomverse #1 when he started recruiting alternate versions of Venomized heroes, starting with the Venom X-23. And let me just say, this Captain America looks awesome. All black, obviously, with white accents. His shield can extend out from his body thanks to the Venom tendrils, but then the Resistance gets attacked by a poisoned out Hulk, and then Cap and a whole bunch of Venom heroes become poisons as well, and they look dope as heck. But still, I'll take the black and white Venom versions over the poison versions any day. Number 4. Bruce Banner. This is a kind of a blink and you miss it moment, which doesn't really make sense for a comic book, but basically in Spider-Man Magazine number 4, we get a little story that shows us a Bruce Banner Hulk who seems to have acquired a Hulk-sized Captain America suit, and he also seems to have Wolverine's adamantium claws, and I'm assuming his adamantium skeleton too. He defends the Daily Bagel against Doc Ock and Magneto. But it seems to be a Hulk who has the wherewithal to become this world's Captain America, but he went through the adamantium bonding process that produced Wolverine? That's utterly insane, and I am not complaining at all. Just wondering when I'm gonna get to see this again, if ever. Please let it happen. I can only assume he's incredibly powerful, but since we don't get to see much of it, this is where I'm gonna put him. Okay? Okay. Number 3. Mutant X. The Captain America of Earth 1298, first appearing in Mutant X number 15 in 1999, was a mutant with no name who took on the role after Steve Rogers was brought to an end by a Sentinel attack. His past was unknown, except for the fact that he was experimented on by the government due to having latent mutanacy. This captain wasn't exactly stable. He lacked control over his mutant powers, which resulted in him accidentally ending the lives of both the Six and most if not all of the Avengers. What were his powers though? This Cap was still given the Super Soldier Serum, which I'm assuming gave him all the same powers as Steve Rogers, but his mutant abilities included the ability to increase his mass and strength, telepathy, force field generation, crazy energy-based powers, and near invulnerability. His abilities activating caused enough of a galactical upset that it woke the Beyonder, who was sleeping inside the planet's core. So yeah, he went rampaging and was a total psychological mess, but that doesn't change the fact that he was absolutely very powerful. Number 2, Major Gamma. The thing I love about comic books, and I've mentioned this already in this video, is that they will come up with just the wildest reasons to give us amazing things we all want. So for example, in the 3rd issue of Tarot, a story from 2020, a set of magical tarot cards representing each of the heroes gets cut in half by Valkyrie and shuffled by the villain Diablo. The cards come back together, and as a result, we get amalgamated heroes. Now 2 of these new heroes are a mix of Captain America and the Incredible Hulk called Major Gamma, and a mix of Captain America and the Silver Surfer named Captain Cosmos. It's kind of hard to pick which of these characters would be more powerful. I'd assume Captain Cosmos, but since you've got a Hulk Cap, which I've definitely always wanted more of, I'm gonna stick with him. Yeah. Yes, I have included 2 very different Hulk Captain Americas, but are you really complaining? Because I'm not. And number 1, we got 2099 Captain America. We've had 3099 Cap already, but he isn't really much compared to this one. First appearing in 2099 Manifest Destiny, this Captain America was frozen again after a war happened that ended the heroic age in his timeline. He was brought to Alchemax, and after being thawed out, he told Miguel O'Hara all about it. But how is he powerful? Well, this Captain America was eventually given Thor's hammer Mjolnir to symbolize the beginning of a new world. That's right, an official Thor cap. Alongside Miguel O'Hara, Captain America assembled the various 2099 heroes into a new team of Avengers and led them into a battle in space. Yes, he looks like a very 90s amalgamation of these 2 characters, but his power was nothing to scoff at. Neither was the inspiration he fired up in people's hearts. Definitely a fantastically powerful version of Captain America.
Number 10, Jonathan Walker. US agent might be a hero now in the comics, but when he started out in the 616 continuity, he was manipulated into becoming a villain. Jonathan Walker was initially known as antagonistic hero Super Patriot, who did his best to discredit Captain America, claiming that he himself stood for the United States' true ideals. As a result of Red Skull's meddling and manipulation, he was appointed to replace Steve Rogers as the new Captain America after Rogers stepped down as the government actually owned the title and refused to let him keep the title if he wasn't going to be working for them. As Captain America, Walker took a very extreme and violent approach that put him into direct conflict with Rogers, who was currently going by the mantle of the Captain. In the end, the Captain defeated Walker, and after Skull's involvement in the ordeal was revealed, the 2 ended up teaming up to take him down, starting off on Walker's path to redemption as hero US agent. Number 9, Cap Wolf. Werewolf Captain America isn't as much an alternate version of Cap as it is a distinct moment in Cap's history where he happened to be transformed into a werewolf. Captain America ends up becoming a werewolf while on the trail of Colonel John Jameson, who had gone missing. Captain America himself had reason to suspect that something awful had happened to Jameson, who it seemed may be plagued by his wolf side once more. Jameson was known in the past for operating as Man-Wolf. It seemed as though a wolf-like creature or werewolf was responsible for a series of murders. In the end, however, Cap's trail ended up leading him into a much more complex and disturbing plot where a villain was attempting to use a recreated Werewolf by Night wolf serum to turn people into werewolves. Captain America became one of their victims and for a time became a werewolf himself. Granted, he was still a hero at this point, but werewolves in general are considered to be somewhat uncontrollable monsters who are at least occasionally ruled by their own bloodlust. So I think we can at least partially count Cap Wolf. Also, I needed to complete the monster trifecta. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more Captain America lists, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. MCU US Agents. In the Marvel Cinematic Universe, US Agent John Walker accidentally becomes an evil version of Captain America without really intending to do that. Really, it's more complicated than him just being straight up evil, as it is with most Marvel Cinematic Universe antagonists. Walker really wants to do right by the Captain America mantle and do it justice. He's a soldier who has worked super hard to earn this title, but also, although his heart might be in the right place, that doesn't mean that he knows the best way to approach replacing Cap or doing right by his legacy. Walker ends up becoming misguided as a result of dealing with so much disrespect from those around him, and as a result of him not being, as powerful as Cap would be, because he doesn't have the super soldier serum. He realizes that being chosen and respected as the new Captain America by the government doesn't necessarily mean that the people of the United States will also respect you, nor that Steve's actual allies and friends will respect you as his replacement either. After he loses his own best friend, Lamar Hoskins, he becomes completely fed up with trying to figure out how to do what's right, and instead decides to do what he feels needs to be done. This makes him much more violent and much more dangerous, turning him into an enemy of Falcon and Winter Soldier, and leading the government to later on remove his title, his honors, and basically just overall dismiss him. Fortunately, the US agent still found a place on what will likely be either the MCU Thunderbolts or Dark Avengers team. TBD, or at least to be declared, if not to be determined. Number 7. Mutant Captain America. This version of Captain America was a mutant who ended up replacing the original Captain America after he died in a Sentinel attack. He wasn't just given the mantle of Cap either, but also ended up receiving the super soldier serum. He had this and his own mutant powers besides, which made him pretty crazy powerful. Although the mutant version of Cap had good intentions, his powers were somewhat uncontrollable, which was a big problem. His powers going haywire was what ended up causing the death of his own group, the Six, and the Avengers, who he was at the time fighting against. This caused him to lose his sanity, turning him into a full-on villain and a loose cannon, who attacked and defeated pretty much everyone who came after him, except Havoc, who managed to successfully kill and defeat the crazed mutant version of Captain America. Poor mutant Captain America, it sounds like it was a rough go, Number 6. Zombie Colonel America. What's worse than a werewolf Cap? A zombie Cap, obviously. This is the version of Captain America that we get in the Marvel Zombieverse. Although really, this isn't Captain America as a zombie, it's Colonel America, because that is Steve Rogers' hero mantle in this reality. Here, Colonel America was infected and turned into a zombie during that first confrontation with the zombified Sentry, which the Avengers responded to in downtown New York. Zombie Cap was responsible for turning Spider-Man into a zombie, biting him after he himself was infected. He was one of the zombies to fight against the villains for who should get the remains of Galactus' corpse, and of course with it the power Cosmic, which would enable them to travel to other worlds, which they then could devour. However, Zombie Cap was defeated by his nemesis, a zombified Red Skull. So, no power Cosmic for him. He dead. He's double dead, really.
Number 5. Earth X. If you haven't read Earth X, well, do it. But the basic premise is that in this alternate reality, the people of the Earth all begin to gain mutant abilities. And in the words of Syndrome from The Incredibles, and when everyone's super, no one will be. Captain America specifically was a bit more tragic in his story. For starters, he felt unworthy as he had actually separated the Red Skull from his head using his shield in an act of vengeance, causing him to step down from the Avengers out of shame. But this likely led to all the Avengers except Vision being defeated by Absorbing Man. So this Cap was a faded version of what he could have been, but he still had all the same powers and abilities and still fought against what was wrong and stood for what was right. But it's when he passed on that he actually became more powerful. Cap turned into one of Mar-Vell's avenging hosts, which were basically angels in the realm of the dead. His wings enabled him to fly. He could change his shape, but usually looked like himself. He was able to travel between the dimensions of the land of the dead to paradise, and from paradise to the antimatter sun of the negative zone. On top of that, Cap could also awaken the latent memories of those in the realm of the dead with a single touch. He also wielded an extremely cool sword, but we don't know what its capabilities really are because he never used it. He is a much different Captain America with an extremely unique set of powers and abilities, but he's also one of the coolest. Number 4. Kiyoshi Morales. When a group of 5 Captain Americas from different realities are brought together, we're gonna look at 2 who have not been seen before. But the one I want to talk about here is Kiyoshi Morales. the great-grandnephew of Luke Cage, and he is the 25th Century's Commander A. Kiyoshi is a much more physically imposing character, standing at what looks like almost 7 feet tall, and he was definitely the biggest among the Captain Americas gathered by Toth Key in Captain America Corps number 1 from 2011. Instead of a vibranium shield, Kiyoshi's suit can generate energy shields on each arm, which resemble the normal Captain America vibranium shield. His suit is much more advanced as well, as you'd expect from the 25th century Captain America stand-in. For example, it features a neuro web, which allows him to tap into the wireless systems and stored information of the world. He had all the enhancements we'd expect, and he is just a super cool character who I really hope we get to see in the future. But for now, he is definitely my favorite of the members of the Captain America Corps. Number 3. Ultimate Universe. In the Ultimate Universe, it seems that Captain America's treatment with the Super Soldier Serum actually seemed to give him a bit more of an edge in terms of his powers. For example, while this universe's Hulk is a bit weaker than the 616 version, he is still incredibly strong. But this Captain America was able to go toe-to-toe for a few rounds against the Hulk, almost actually defeating him and eventually knocking him out, which is like 616 Cap could never do that. Ultimate Cap also seemed pretty capable of handling armies of guys all on his own. He was an extremely capable leader while also being a bit more than a little ruthless compared to his 616 counterpart. Like when he was fighting against the Chitauri Herr Kleiser, his rival. He resorted to traumatizing Bruce Banner to get him to turn into the Hulk and then convincing him that Kleiser was getting it on with Betty Ross so that Hulk would pummel Kleiser into the concrete and then eat him. That kind of wholesome stuff. Nice. Number 2. Soldier Supreme. A cap-wielding Mjolnir? Cool. But how about a cap with the mystical and magical powers of the Sorcerer Supreme? Well, we get that in Infinity Warps, when Gamora, wielding the Infinity Gauntlet, basically folds reality in half, merging characters with other characters. One of the two merged together, in case you didn't catch on, is Captain America Steve Rogers and the Sorcerer Supreme, Dr. Stephen Strange. The result would be Stephen, with a PH, Rogers, the Soldier Supreme. He fought in World War II against the German Hell Priest Dormammu Red, and would use his super enhancements and military training alongside his mystical and magical abilities. During World War II, he teamed up with his Howling Commandos of Hoggoth, including Dum Dum Fury and Bucky Wong. Later, in the modern era, after returning from banishment in the Negative Zone, he would team up with Iron Hammer, Arachnite, and Weapon Hex to battle against Devondra. Number 1. Super Soldier. Seems like when you take one character and smush them together with another character, you get a pretty OP new character. Like Soldier Supreme, or Cap-wielding Mjolnir, or even Danielle Cage to a degree. But what if you took Captain America and you fused him together with one of the strongest characters in all of comic books? Well, in the Amalgam universe where Marvel characters are mixed in with DC Comics characters, we got Super Soldier. And if you haven't guessed by now, this is Captain America mixed together with Superman. When Clark Kent volunteered for the Super Soldier program, he was injected with a Super Soldier serum containing cellular kryptonite samples from an alien, while also being doused in solar radiation. The result was a power set unheard of for any other Captain America. Super strength over 1 million tons. Invulnerability to everything but Green K, as it's called. Superhuman stamina to the point of being completely tireless. He can fly at speeds of around Mach 10. He has superhuman speed at speeds of about 2,000 miles per second. He can hear and smell anything on Earth. He has a sonic scream that allows Clark to destroy someone's literal essence. No need to eat or sleep. He can heal instantly from most any injury due to his altered metabolism. Clark can create hurricane-level winds by blowing and can also chill his breath to project ice from his mouth. And he has extremely hot heat vision. I think that pretty much covers it, and I don't really need to say more. But you take all that and put it in the mind of an expert tactician and soldier, it's game over for you, buddy. Sorry. Number 10. MCU Kids. What? That's right.
Thanks to the writers of Endgame, we know for certain that Captain America has 2 kids with none other than Peggy Carter. At the end of Endgame, Captain America decided to retire to the past and marry Peggy Carter, who he had been separated from for decades thanks to his years spent in the ice before being revived during the events of the first Avengers film. Peggy's husband was first referenced in the 2014 sequel to the first Captain America film, Captain America the Winter Soldier, in which an older Peggy mentions that she got married after the war and had 2 children. We now know that that husband actually was Steve himself, who had gone back in time, and those 2 mysterious children belonged to him. This kind of leaves us wondering, where were Captain America's super kids this whole time, and will they play a part in the Marvel Cinematic Universe in years to come? This has yet to be seen, but they will almost definitely play a part in the future of the MCU. Number 9. Jack Rogers. Jackson Jack Rogers is from the alternate future world of Earth TRN 858 and is Steve Rogers' great-great-grandson. He lives in a utopian society where the super soldier serum is used by hospitals to cure patients. The only problem is that for Jack's son, Steve, his body is rejecting the serum and having a negative effect. He goes to the president and asks for the secrets to the serum, but a Kree general rejects him. Turns out the Kree are actually using the serum to turn humans into a sleeper army. So once Jackson finds that out, a whole manhunt begins, and he ends up allying, sorta, with the Red Skull and using his ancestor's shield to fight against the Kree. Now it turns out his son actually has a recessive Kree gene, and the serum is actually harmful to the Kree, which Rogers uses to his advantage, finding the serum and stopping the Kree invaders with a bit of help from the Cosmic Q powered Red Skull. Now it's a really cool story, but Rogers is basically just a normal guy with a great lineage. Number 8. General America. Unfortunately, we don't know much about the great-grandson of Steven Rogers, as the story he was in, What If Captain America #1, was mainly about the Civil War hero. But from what I can tell, he seems to have the same kind of enhancements as his previous ancestors who took up the Captain America mantle. They were all blessed with an ancient power that gave them peak human conditioning and also, presumably, mystical protection from harm. Another point that I think just makes them a cut above is their constant battle with the white supremacist group known as the White Skulls. He himself is descended from the great Civil War era Captain America who fought the White Skull, saved President Lincoln and the Native American peoples, and even helped end the Civil War earlier than it normally would have. The Captain Americas are a lineage that will continue on as long as there is injustice to fight. Coming in at number 7, it's Ellie Rogers. The daughter of Steve Rogers and Sharon Carter, Ellie Rogers is a member of the Resistance in the really cool Secret Wars story of Hail Hydra from 2015. In the second issue, she meets up with Ian Rogers, Nomad, and after the Resistance is attacked by Venom, she gets infused with a Venom symbiote, gaining similar powers to those of Eddie Brock. Before this point though, she seems to just be a very healthy, regular person, even despite her father's super soldier status. She had given up on the dream of the Resistance after such a long time under the control of Hydra, but her brother, Nomad, inspired her to keep up the fight, and they got in a wee kerfuffle with the Hydra Avengers. She was taken out by her injuries. Number 6. James Rogers. With most of the heroes killed during a battle with Ultron and the world at the mercy of the villain's army, Captain America tells Iron Man to take the children of the Avengers to a base in the Arctic Circle to keep them safe. Here, Tony trains the kids for over 12 years until they become the new young Avengers. Among these children is the son of Captain America and Black Widow, James Rogers. As the son of 2 super soldiers, James possesses all the benefits of the super soldier serum: peak human strength, speed, durability, agility, stamina, and reflexes. He also becomes the natural leader of the group of young Avengers and has a natural gift for tactics and planning. So much so that it helped the team to defeat Ultron with the help of the Hulk.
Number 5. Danielle Cage. Danielle Cage is the future daughter of Jessica Jones and Luke Cage. This could be who the future little 616 Danielle Cage ends up as, or maybe not. Only time will tell if Danielle ends up having a similar future to this alternate version of herself and Captain America, or not. In this reality of Earth 15061, Danielle Cage grows up to become the hero Captain America, possessing the abilities of both her father and her mother, meaning she's both super strong and super durable and can fly, all of that good stuff you've come to know and love from both Luke and Jessica's heroic power sets. As Captain America in the future, she also has inherited and wields the Captain America shield. Number 4. MCU Captain America. I mean, of course MCU Captain America has last to make our cut. The Marvel Cinematic version of the character is not only extremely popular, but it's also deemed worthy enough to lift Thor's hammer, giving us that awesome fight scene in Avengers Endgame where Thor and Captain America are switching back and forth, alternating between sharing and wielding Mjolnir and Stormbreaker. This ultimately gives Cap a big power boost, being able to wield Thor's weapons, especially considering that Thor is one of the most powerful members of the Avengers team, in part because of his powerful, magical, and also kinda cosmic weapons. Number 3. Carol Danvers. That's right, Carol at one point managed to become Captain America. This has actually happened in more than one reality, but for this list we're going to focus on the version of Carol Cap that comes from the Venomverse. She appears as Captain America in Venomverse war stories and hails from the same reality as Venom Rocket, Earth 18197. In the story she appears in, Captain America Carol Danvers and Venom Rocket battle it out as Rocket is looking to cash in on a bounty for the Kree who want Carol Danvers. Venom Rocket and Captain America seem pretty evenly matched here, but in the end, Rocket does not manage to capture Carol, and Carol seemingly ends up the victor of that match, though undoubtedly left with a pretty big mess to clean up as a result of their destructive battle. Carol Danvers as Captain America still seemingly possesses some version of her Kree physiology and her 616 power set here, making her a pretty powerful alternate version of Captain America. Number 2. Super Soldier. Super Soldier hails from the Amalgam Universe. Stories and characters created using the combined lore of DC Comics' main roster of superheroes and villains and Marvel Comics' main roster of superheroes and villains. Super Soldier himself is an alternate version created by combining the heroes Captain America from Marvel and Superman from DC. Clark Kent ended up in the Super Soldier program during World War II, which used alien DNA taken from a corpse that was discovered to alter Clark Kent permanently, granting him superhuman powers. He has the combined power set of both Cap and Supes, making him pretty crazy powerful, although he also comes with his own highly dangerous villain as well, the Green Skull, and his own weakness to the ore known as Green K. So keep in mind, he does have that weakness. Number 1. Soldier Supreme. Soldier Supreme is what you get when you combine the mystical powerhouse of Doctor Strange with the all-American war hero Captain America. The result is a character who happens to be tough, strong, fast, and a gifted fighter, while also possessing tons of mystical knowledge and abilities. Soldier Supreme hails from Warp World, the reality created by Gamora when she folded the universe in half using the power of the Infinity Stones. Here, Steve Rogers participated in the Super Soldier program, which was really a front for something less scientific and more magical in nature. Conducting a series of rituals, Dr. Morgan Erskine transformed Steven Rogers into the Soldier Supreme.